Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 326 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin. I have Falcoholic Kevin joined.
Are we live?
Yeah, we're live now. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
there's
too
no
late.
going back.
Too late. Yeah,
I
too late,
just looked. I just want to say before you even introduce us, it was so kind of Adnan to come through from his hotel room, his hospital room, in his hospital gown. His hair's all messed up. I just looked at it. I'm sorry. I just looked at it. I love you, man. I really enjoyed hanging out with you.
Hey, man. Yeah, couldn't even let Kevin get one sentence in before roasting.
We're already off the rails. We're 10 seconds.
I'm sorry. I know that's very unprofessional of me, but it was very kind of you to join us today. From the hospital with that 1950s lighting and the 1950s hairstyle and that hospital gown that you're wearing.
Goodness, my God, that's like 4 or 5 in a row.
That was like 6 rows. Yeah. We haven't even gotten to the picks yet.
Right now.
We're getting off on a great foot here, folks. It's going to be obviously a lot of spicy takes flying on tonight's draft grade show with Marc Raimondi. He's here from ESPN at Marc Raimondi. Marc, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great now. I mean, this made my day. I mean, I'm glad that Adnan is is well.
Yes, thank God Adnan's okay. Yeah, we're happy to see him. We weren't sure if he was going to be able to make it tonight.
Hey, if the Falcons haven't been able to kill me so far, then nothing can stop me yet.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Adnan, Ikic here with us
from the Grady Hospital emergency room.
There you go. Live takes here.
I'm dedicated to the takes.
He is. He's a company man through and through, Adnan. So
Dave won't let us get any time off.
No. That from the hospital, you got to call in. And Adnan, I can check that box so that Dave will not withhold your paycheck now since you have called in. How are you doing tonight? Other than of course being just inches from your hospital bed at this moment.
I'm doing well. It's nice weather. I did finally get rid of the long hair. So true story. The last time I had gotten a haircut, and the reason why I'm talking about it is because it was a topic on like some shows from the viewers here and there. The reason why, or previously, my last haircut was early September. So literally before the season started, right before the season started. And I told myself that the next time the Falcons do something that doesn't disappoint me, I'm gonna cut my hair. So it grew and it grew, and then this draft was so good that I'm like, all right, I'm no longer disappointed. So now I can reset. So that's my segue into us talking about the draft. That's actually not what happened, but yeah, it is true that the last time I had cut my hair was in September.
Yes. Well.
Too hot for that right now.
Yeah, I up in New York, I can get away with the long hair all year round. But yeah, if I was having to cover like Falcons practices for more than like a week in July, I'd probably have to cut it just because it's so brutal out there. But guys, we're here. We're gonna talk about this draft class. We got lots of takes for you tonight. Getting into this draft, getting into these prime UDFAs, exciting class. Obviously the Falcons do some spicy stuff, some bold takes, which seem to have really rubbed some people the wrong way. There's some very aggressive takes on this draft class, so I'm excited to get Marc's take as well. Before we dive in, I want to bring you guys a real quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. Folks, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing with the draft behind us, and we're into the home stretch for the NBA and NHL playoffs as well. BetOnline's got the most ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. If you weren't lucky enough to hit that Shadur Sanders plus to the Browns for plus 550, that was my one placement in this draft on BetOnline, and that obviously did cash. I had to wait until day 3 for that to happen, but that made it all the sweeter. They got all that stuff for you guys, though. They've got the largest selection of odds and everything from MLB, NHL, UFC, NBA. BetOnline remains your number one online source for all your sports wagering info in between games. They've also got the new BetOnline Casino, all the top Vegas-style games, including poker, live slots, all that stuff. Make sure when you sign up to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get access to the latest promotions. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, well, we're going to lead off with Marc's takes because we only got him for a little bit tonight. He's got a jam-packed schedule. of roasting Adnan that's got to continue after the show's over. So
how was that Emery Decatur emergency room coffee, Adnan? Was it good?
Hey man,
Very good.
I
He gave you like the powder.
taking a sip of my racetrack coffee. Apparently, Mark is looking at everything right now.
It's just locked and loaded tonight. Like he was just ready, like coming in with the takes for Adnan. So
he's like the Falcons when we're at Flowery Branch. Can't get away with anything.
Nothing gets past. Mark is sharp. We know that. Didn't realize how sharp he would be tonight, but this is what happens. We get Mark on here 4 or 5 times, and all of a sudden, he's just one of the hosts now. So I think we're all better for it, and we're all very comfortable now. Yes. We did get a $5 from Alex Foster saying, Adnan, do you think Terry drafted better this year just to spite you for saying he's not a very good GM?
Hey man, if that's what it takes, anything it takes, man, I will proudly be spited. And I will proudly say what needs to be said, and if the Falcons want to, use that as a chip on their shoulders to do the right thing and to actually get better, then honestly, anything it takes. It's been 7 years since we've made the playoffs. But also, I kind of feel vindicated because this is finally the one time Terry Fontenot has done the stuff that I've been wanting them to do in the draft. And the result was so far the day after. It's been a hell of a draft, much better than I feel so much better now than I felt the day after any of the past 4 drafts.
Yeah, I agree. I do feel really good about it too.
That has you in the hospital, right?
Yeah. He's so burned from his relentless attacks on Fontenot. The mental strain of the shell shock of going from just expecting that to this draft class, the shell shock, alone.
It put my body into a state of shock. I couldn't believe the Fontenot had a good draft.
After that James Pearce trade up, we were just in shambles on the live show. But speaking of the first round, Mark, I mean, 2 picks unexpectedly. Jalen Walker at 15, which was unexpected in its own right. Obviously, they decided to just make me look silly when I was like, I know Fontenot loves to trade up, but they really don't have any picks, so they probably can't do that. Well, they found a way to do it. Obviously, very controversial. But what did you think about how they tackled this first round? Because there's a lot of takes flying around about it.
This is so polarizing. Everyone either absolutely loves this, and it's an A+, Falcons had one of the best drafts, or it was terrible, one of the worst drafts in the league. There's no in between. There's no one that has a mediocre, lukewarm take on this draft for the Falcons. It's one extreme or the other. And I lean more to, I thought it was great. I thought what they did was really good because we've been talking about they need a pass rush for a very long time. And they were able to get 2 of the best, linebackers / edge rushers in the entire draft in the first round. Yes, it was costly. They had to give up a first round pick from next year's draft, but chips on the table, guys, but they're going all in. They believe in Michael Penix Jr. They believe in this offense. And is it the worst idea to have someone like a James Pearce Jr. for 5 years? Because you stay pat and you're with the second round pick. You don't know who you're going to get at that point, and you're not going to have them. You're not going to have control over them for 5 years. So I think it was risky. Certainly, it was a gamble, as the draft always is going to be. But they managed to fill a need with 2 very good players, at least on paper, right? Projected to be very good players. And then they went out in the 3rd and 4th rounds and also filled needs and also got players that a lot of people thought fell too low. So we're talking about 4 players in Walker, Pierce, Watts, and Bowman that all fell from where a lot of people had them mocked, right? And the Falcons got all of them, and they're all, high-level Division I FBS players who produced at that level, who have measurables as well for the most part. Watts is not the most athletic guy, but he's got the production, 13 interceptions in the last couple of years. I think it was an A draft personally. And I know the critics, have the idea of draft of trading a first round pick is oh my God, I can't believe we did that. But they got a first round pick in return. That was the one that they used on James Pearce Jr., which is a guy they needed. Again, none of this matters. This conversation is completely moot if both guys either play great or don't play great. You know what I mean? It all depends on how they end up playing. we have no idea what's going to happen. No one does. But on paper, I thought it was a very good draft.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, you mentioned it, like the trade up is what everyone's going to talk about, because that's kind of where this whole thing rests is, did you make the right call giving up next year's first or not? And we probably won't know the answer to that until this season, at least partway through this season. We won't know until we've seen what James Pearce is able to do for this team. But, it's essentially a bet on themselves. It's the bet that everyone should want their team to make, unless they're just unless they have no chance, which is not the case. I think there certainly is a chance for this team. I mean, for the Falcons, I think the people that are the most against this trade, I hesitate to call people out, but I'm just gonna go for like Sheil Kapadia. Like, generally respect, Sheil. Like, I don't have a problem with him personally, but to say that the Falcons have no plan and be so adamant about it and say they had no plan last year, how arrogant do you have to be to think that what their plan is? Like, you just don't like the plan. That doesn't mean there isn't one. Like, that's a different thing. Like, you could completely disagree with the plan, but to say that they're just flailing around with like a chicken with its head cut off is just completely objectively incorrect. Like, they have a plan, and their plan is to aggressively target their biggest weakness. Ever since Raheem Morris has got here, they aggressively went after quarterback last year. That was their biggest weakness. It was controversial as hell too. It ended up working out, or at least it looks like it will. We'll have to see long-term if Penix is the solution. But if they had just got Kirk Cousins, that team would have been a disaster last year with no hope going into this season. If they had just got Michael Penix, who knows what would have happened? Maybe that would have been better. Maybe they would have never got him because somebody would have traded up ahead of them for a quarterback. But who knows? This year, their biggest issue is the pass rush. And what did they do? They aggressively went after fixing it. And they didn't have any free agency money to spend. So, I mean, I'm not shocked that they went out and got two guys instead of one. But yeah, what were you going to say, Adnan? I'm sorry.
I think part of that is just the stigma that, like, the Falcons are, this franchise that just can't get out of its own way and that falls flat on its face, which, to be fair, that's mostly been the case throughout, especially the last 7 years or so. So I feel like no matter what, like anything that they do that's like aggressive or that's any sort of a gamble will be frowned upon. The same way that it would be frowned upon if the Jets did it. The same way it would be frowned upon if the Browns did it. Whereas, if this was, let's say, the Chiefs making this trade up or doing this exact same thing, in this exact same scenario with the same defensive line, everyone would be applauding it because, hey, the Chiefs are a successful franchise. They know exactly what they're doing. I think it mostly now comes from media narratives and stigma, because you can't say that the Falcons don't have a plan. Whether or not you agree with it is one thing, but the team clearly has a plan. The team clearly went into this draft with the strategy. They did execute it on their own terms, but I feel like that's something where that sort of stuff will go away if the team, starts to win over the next few years.
And it's obvious they had a plan, guys, because like Pearce was their plan. He was the guy that they wanted at number 15. He was their guy. And then they had to adapt on the fly because Jalen Walker fell to them. So instead of, being completely, non-flexible and rigid in sticking with that plan, they adapted. Jalen Walker's there at 15. You take Jalen Walker, and they did. And then they went back and they still got their guy anyway, which I think there is something to say. There's credit that is owed there in that regard. Again, it was aggressive and it was a costly move. And, maybe those guys don't end up being elite players and the Falcons look bad in a year. We don't know. But today, right now on, April 30th, 2025, that they did what they felt like they had to do in order to become a better team next year. And you can't fault them for that.
I agree. I mean, I think it's like the other side of this coin is like if they don't make this trade and they just take Xavier Watts at 46 and then go about their business the rest of the draft, then is the line they didn't do enough to fix the pass rush? Because I think that's what the line would be, right? So I think it's not like draft grades in general, much like mock drafts, and as a mock draft aficionado, I'm not saying like anything about that. Like, they're for entertainment, right? The draft grades also, people love draft grades. They don't really have any impact on anything, right? That we're grading players that we've never seen take a snap in the NFL, so they're inherently a somewhat dumb exercise, right? So it is what it is. And, you know, as someone who makes like 10 mock drafts a year, starting in like sometimes during the NFL season, it's not about being accurate. It's just because it's a fun exercise. So I get it. But I think if you're, go ahead.
If we really love draft grades and we really want to, like, you know, analyze it accurately, we should be, you know, putting down our draft grades from the 2022 draft.
Yeah,
like,
it's about time.
Where they've had like 3 years to, like, you know, see what's going on. So it's like, you know, if you actually want draft grades, like, you know, for it to not be an exercise in futility, then, you know, grade the draft from 3 years ago and do that like year after year. But that's no fun because that's, you know, 3 years ago is 3 years ago. That's old news.
Yeah. It's so at this point, you know, while it is silly, you know, I do think it's interesting how aggressive. I do like it's funny because you'll see there's some people that are just super aggressive with how they grade drafts, and some people are very much like, I'm not really going to give any drafts a bad grade or too great of a grade because we don't really know these players. So it's kind of interesting to see how that changes based on the grader. But at this point, you know, I think you look at like objectively, it seems like something shifted with the Falcons' approach to the draft this year. And in years past, they've always been aggressive. You know, Terry Fontenot himself admitted it, right? But this year felt different. Like, they were still aggressive, obviously. They made 2 trade-ups. But it seemed like they were much more adherent to sort of the consensus board. In the past, the Falcons have not really followed it. At least that's what it seemed like. This year, every single pick the Falcons made was positive value versus the consensus board. Now, maybe that's a coincidence. Maybe it's not. But it seemed like Jeff Ulbrich in particular was super involved in the draft process. I'm curious, you know, Mark, do you think maybe it's Ulbrich's influence? Maybe it's just sort of the team looking at ways to improve and saying like, well, maybe this consensus board, which we've seen now for several years, maybe we should be paying a little bit more attention to this and trying to sort of shape their draft around getting value, particularly in a year where they already are limited on draft capital.
Yeah, and I think it was a few different things. I think you touched on it earlier with when you said, Kevin, like that they didn't have a lot of salary cap room, so they really were not able to make the team drastically better in free agency like they probably would have or wanted to, especially on defense, which, you know, the defense struggled last year. So I think that was a big reason why they were so aggressive in the draft, because they knew that they just, you know, Leonard Floyd is a solid player. You know, Morgan Fox, I think they'll be helpful to the team, but there was no high profile free agent this year for the Falcons. So, you know, they went out and they filled the need with 2 guys that were, you know, really good college players at that position at edge rusher. And I do think for sure that Raheem Morris and I hope we don't lose Adnan here. Is the nurse coming? Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich, I think they had their fingerprints all over this draft. You know, I think Raheem Morris, you saw, you know, that the way that he kind of assessed the first 13 weeks last year, right, at the bye week, and the defense was not playing well, and he got more hands-on, and the defense started to play better. The pass rush especially started to play better. And I think that was a lot of that in this draft. Maybe last year he kind of like, you know, stepped back and said, all right, you know, I mean, I don't want to say he's new here because he was here a few years ago, but, you know, this is his first time being the full-time head coach of the Falcons. He was only there for a few months when they came in. He probably had not evaluated the players at that level yet that he had on the roster. And he kind of let, you know, personnel and front office and Terry Fontenot do what they were going to do. Not saying he had no input at all, but I think that this year, and also the addition of Jeff Ulbrich, who seems like a guy who was very hands-on as well and very passionate, I feel like they really put their fingerprints on this draft. And Ulbrich alluded to that, not even alluded to it. He said, this is the most collaboration I've ever had in the NFL. And this is a guy that's been, you know, defensive coordinator, interim head coach. So he's well respected, and then he's been, you know, he's had major jobs in the NFL before. And he said that this was the first time that he really had this level of collaboration, which means, you know, says to me, like, I agree with that. It's like, this is a guy that's going to bring in a new system on a defense that desperately needs revamping, rehauling, you know, more speed, better personnel, point blank, right? And they asked Jeff Ulbrich, hey, what do you need? And for the most part, they kind of delivered on what he needed. So I don't see any way that it's not a positive in that respect.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really like this approach. Like, so it's hard to say to me. Like, I don't know what was the biggest change, whether it's the pressure, whether it's the new defensive coordinator and maybe a little bit more collaboration on that side of the ball, or just Raheem Morris becoming more comfortable with the process. Because a lot of people forget, like, by the time the new head coach gets in the building, like, the scouting has pretty much been done. Like, by the time, most of the scouting of the college football season has already been completed. So, he has to get kind of brought up to speed on what's going on pretty quick. And, by the time the draft actually rolls around in late April, it's like you're starting kind of halfway through the process. So maybe this is just a product of they actually had a full, year, a full season together with the scouting staff, able to sort of target more effectively, and beyond that, just maybe get a little bit more luck in the draft. I mean, who knows? But I really liked, the first round moves. I do like, I'm more skeptical of Jalen Walker than most, but I think at 15, like you said, it's kind of like you can't really pass. Like, at that point, you got to take the chance on Jalen Walker, and just because of his potential. But like day 2, like with Xavier Watts, who they said it and I've said it, like, I was happy to take him at 46. Like, I was pretty excited every time I would see Xavier Watts available at 46. He was like a top 40 player for me. On the consensus board, I think he was 48. They're able to get Xavier Watts at 96, as a part of this trade. And I think that's a super underrated part of this first round trade that nobody seems to talk about, is that they got a day 2 pick that they were missing as a part of this trade. They didn't have a third rounder. They turned their second rounder into a first, and they picked up a third rounder they didn't have. And they get a safety that was a top 50 pick on most boards. So, I mean, what did you think about this pickup in the third round?
You asking me or our patient here?
I guess, but yeah, you first. I mean, I know Adnan's take, he was there. Yeah,
you got my takes for 15 hours on the 3-day draft show. So every single draft take I have, I've squeezed out.
Really, on day 3 in particular, we really rung.
Is that what landed you? Is squeezing all that stuff out? Is that what landed you in the hospital?
Oh, I wouldn't word it that way.
If you say it like that, it sounds nefarious. Yeah.
I would definitely not word out that I squeezed something out and ended up in an emergency room.
Wow, incredibly unprofessional performance by me today, but
we're all too comfortable here.
To your point, absolutely. Value is what they got. It really seemed like with Xavier Watts. And, I don't really know why he fell to where he did. Maybe just the undervaluing of safety as a position in general, potentially. But certainly a guy that, I mean, we heard from Kyle Smith today, the assistant GM, and he said he feels pretty confident that all 4 of those top 4 draft picks will be starters for the Falcons, at least at some point. And I think they're going to be in competition to start right off the bat, certainly. So that'll be very interesting to see. But yeah, value, Billy Bowman. You'll probably ask about him next.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll make another joke about Adnan being in the hospital. And no, but Billy Bowman, kind of a similar thing. I had as soon as they picked him, I had a friend of mine who's a big OU fan, who's a big Sooner fan. It was not David Bassity, the head of communications for the Atlanta Falcons. It was a friend of mine, and he was just raving about this kid, Billy Bowman. He's like, you're gonna love him. He's a fantastic player, great guy. His wife is one of the best center fielders in the history of softball. He was like going off on this tangent about this guy. He loves him, and they love him down there in Oklahoma. So, yeah, another value pick, a guy that has measurables and also production. And it's your point. It does not it didn't feel like the kind of draft the Falcons have had over the last several years, where they were taking guys a lot. I don't want to say anything bad about Rook Ororo, because I think he could still become a very, very good player in the NFL. He has shown flashes of that, but he was a guy that was very much on traits, right? They love the traits. They love the arm length. They love the explosiveness. They love the size, right, and the strength. These were guys, all 4 of those top, and you can even throw Jack Nelson into that in the 7th round. These were all guys that produced at the highest level of college football, starters, captains, So yeah, definitely a little bit of a different strategy. And I would also probably note that, Mike Rutenberg also is part of the staff, and I think he's very hands-on. He told me today that he had, a meeting with Billy Bowman a few weeks ago, I guess, before the draft, and he said this guy's incredible. He's like, I wanted to go to dinner, and the guy's talking about he wanted to talk about football. He wanted to watch film. And then they went to dinner, and he was still talking about football the whole time. And he's like, this guy loves football. He's obsessed with football. That's all he wants to do. And that really, they wanted to almost trade up. They wanted to trade up again for Bowman, but they got it. They got him anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's an exciting class. And you mentioned even Nelson was positive value, by like 20 spots or something. But the other two, it felt to me like they basically got everyone like a round later than they thought. Jalen Walker was expected to be a top 10 pick. They pounce on him at 15. James Pearce is expected to be a top 20 pick. They trade back up to get him in the first round. Xavier Watts is expected to be their second round pick. They trade up slightly, get him in the third round. Billy Bowman was maybe going to be their third round pick that they picked up. They're able to wait and get him in the fourth round. And then Jack Nelson, good day 3 selection. It seems like they were just able to get guys that they really liked. And one of the things that I really appreciated this time around as opposed to last year was I loved the instant conviction about these players. Like, the second they drafted Billy Bowman, what we were talking about on the show was, oh, well, where is he going to play? Like, didn't they just draft Watts? Like, okay, like, Bowman's good. Like, maybe they just really want to improve their safety depth, whatever. Before we even, like, finished talking about the pick, Ulbrich was on the air talking about how he's going to be our nickel. Oh, yeah, he's our slot. Yeah, we wanted to play slot. I love it.
Kevin,
I love it.
That's another example of, like, so you're saying the Falcons actually had a plan? Yeah,
plan.
That was actually the plan.
Yeah.
That was the plan. They wanted Billy Bowman so they could have him play slot corner. They had him, they had him in their sights for several rounds at that point. So yeah, it was part of the plan, and they have a plan for this guy particularly.
Yeah, so I really appreciated that after last year. Last year, the word we heard so much is how comfortable they were. I don't want you to be comfortable. I want you to have a take, like have conviction about something. And I appreciated the conviction that they had about these picks going up to get guys they wanted. And so yeah,
I will add one thing. They had conviction about Michael Penix Jr.
Oh yeah,
they did.
Yeah.
They had a lot of conviction about him, and they needed to because they got absolutely destroyed last year for that. And guess what? Like you said earlier, if they didn't take Michael Penix Jr. or they took like a Latour or like a Dallas Turner, this is a whole different conversation. They're probably not 8 and 9. I don't know I honestly don't know what they would be. I have no clue. Yeah.
I'm not sure if they win any more games.
Very well.
Yeah. Not sure if they win any more games with Kirk Cousins after those
probably
6.
Probably taking Shador, honestly.
Yeah, maybe.
They could have taken Shador. They could. I'm surprised they didn't just roll the dice and take Shador this year. I was waiting for that.
You can never have too many quarterbacks, So yeah.
I mean, the Cleveland Browns have 5.
Yeah,
that's the most interesting quarterback room in the history of the NFL.
You can if you combine everything in Cleveland, like you've got like the football mind of Joe Flacco, you've got sort of the accuracy and touch of Shedeur Sanders, you've got the agent and legal team of Deshaun Watson. You could have like a super quarterback going on there. So it's a dangerous combination there. It's wild stuff, but.
Dangerous combination indeed.
But Mark, I appreciate you making the time tonight. I know you got other arrangements to get to.
Since I hijacked, we can go another 10 minutes.
Okay. We bought
Since I was
another 10 minutes of Adnan roasting on deck.
Yes, okay. Yes. I mean, there's a certain level of professionalism to be on a website called Falcoholic. I mean, there's you have to really rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
So now I'm just sorry.
This is what happens after like the third or fourth show on here. Everybody just feels like they could just come on and shoot the shit. So that's the atmosphere we're trying to cultivate. So we're glad you're feeling that.
Excellent.
Yeah,
excellent. You got me.
Yep, we got him in, guys.
Adnan hates me right now. By the way.
Adnan's never been.
He's gonna sucker punch me during training camp.
I'm over here like, yeah, Mark, you can go. We don't need that extra 10 minutes.
I don't think anyone's ever, aggressively gone after Adnan to this extent on the pod. So you've set a new bar here, Mark.
I'm gonna need Daniel Flick to have my back. This training camp.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably watching right now. Shout out Daniel Flick.
Yeah, shout out to Daniel. Yeah, he said he was gonna
be my bodyguard.
Yeah, he said he was gonna say hi to you. Did he say hi to you from us? He said he was gonna do that. So
when was that?
Like during the draft, because he came outside to call us. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
We're
We're
gonna have to roast him next time he's on. Yeah.
He probably didn't, but Mark is just trying to save face for him right now.
Maybe.
He probably did, but I was probably just like, all right,
Yeah. I mean, as a
I,
whole,
I
like,
bought I
go ahead.
bought Daniel Flick
Mhm.
his first ever legal adult beverage. How about that?
Wow.
Oh wow, that
I'm
actually
jealous.
is
I'm
curious
jealous.
For
for.
the Falcoholic. Someone write that up.
Yep, that we gotta. Yeah, Adnan, we're gonna forward this to
Yeah.
one of our writers to get on this immediately. This is breaking news.
That's big.
I don't think Daniel's 21, so the authorities will.
No, he's 21. He's
He
21.
is.
He turned 21. He turned 21 the week before we were in Tampa this year.
Okay.
For Falcons at Bucks. And what was that, week 8? That was week 8, I believe. And after the game, we went out for a beer. Me, Daniel, and Taryn Walk. Shout out Taryn Walk from Falcons.com.
Nice. That sounds. We're gonna have to get more scoops on this. Yeah, on this event and others. We're gonna have to catch up at training camp on all these activities.
That's a nice peek behind the curtain there. That's some.
Oh yeah, I got them all. I got a lot of peeks behind the curtain. Sometimes the hospital curtain where Adnan is.
Yeah, he's been in there too. He's been in that room. Yeah.
It's actually at Arthur Blank Children's Hospital, right?
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna ask the Falcons to let me and Mark hit an Oklahoma drill at camp this year.
My honor has been besmirched. Yes. Mark, anything else on this class? I mean, we talked about most of the picks. There were 2 UDFAs that I think, to me, like I had Kobe Bryant as like an early day 3 guy, and Nick Nash is somebody that I've declared him, he's my guy, and he's going to make this roster. But yeah, I mean, any of the UDFAs you like, maybe it's those 2, maybe anybody else that they brought in, but.
Yeah, Joshua Gray, who I think is going to be, he could definitely make the roster at center. The 2 guys that you mentioned, certainly. I think they really made out quite well, really, really quite well. And I think that it's going to be the defense is going to look vastly different. Talking about especially just the edge rushers, it's like we haven't even seen Braylon Trice take a snap, right? Last year the edge rushers were, Lorenzo Carter, James Smith-Williams, no disrespect to those guys. Matthew Judon didn't have his best season, obviously, but now you're infusing that group with speed and youth. Leonard Floyd is not super youthful, but he's been productive, right? So it's on paper it's improved, and to be honest, after free agency, you could say has the roster really improved on the defensive side. You lose Grady Jarrett, and you pick up Leonard Floyd, Morgan Fox, a few of the other guys, Jordan Fuller, of course. You bring Mike Hughes back, Keith Taylor, Mike Ford, so on and so forth. But is that defensive roster really better? Now I think you could make the argument that yes, it is actually potentially significantly better with who they've brought in. Divine Diablo, of course, free agency. So yeah, I think with the UDFAs, with the 4 top picks in the draft, we'll see what happens with Jack Nelson. I think he'll make the team. I'm not sure. We'll see. I think Storm Norton has got that kind of like swing tackle, spot on lock. Yeah. He's really solid. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with Ryan Newsel at center. They probably would have loved to have Wilson, right, from Georgia at center. But I think they're pretty content with what they got. If not over the moon, honestly.
Mark, I do have a question. So we were tracking Wilson throughout day 2.
Yeah.
And we were sort of a little heartbroken when he went to the Patriots, like 2 picks before. But I think our idea was like, all right, Watts, Wilson, both are good. If Wilson would have been there at pick, I think it was 96, would you have taken him over Xavier Watts?
That's a really tough question.
That's a really
tough one.
It's a hard.
I don't know the answer to that. I would say probably yes, just because you want to have. I mean, you could set up a thing where there's long-term continuity with the quarterback in the center, right? Second-year quarterback, first-year center, and add more stability to that line. I think Ryan Newsel is a solid player, and I don't think they lost a ton with him filling in for Dahlman last year. For the most part, maybe the rushing game was not as effective with him compared to Dahlman, but yeah, probably Wilson, just because I think. I don't know. That's kind of like a more. I don't want to say it's easy to find safeties, but the Falcons are moving Kevin King to safety. That's one of the things that they talked about today too. Kevin King's going to be a safety this year. They have Fuller. They have DeMarco Helms. I think Xavier Watts could potentially beat all those guys out to the starting job right alongside Jesse Bates. But there were people there that could do solidly. And as far as center, having someone like that who could be like a blue chip center for you for a long time probably would have been hard to pass someone like that up.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, to me, it was I was actually kind of thankful that the Patriots took him, so we wouldn't have to have this debate. Like it eliminated the debate. We could just be happy about Xavier Watts. We wouldn't have to endlessly debate whether they should have taken Wilson or Watts or whatever. So to me, like I know people are like, oh, the Patriots sniped him, but the Falcons when they traded up already knew that
Yeah,
Wilson was
the
going.
last
So,
time we were debating safety versus center, we took Richie Grant over Creed Humphrey, and we're still talking about it to this day.
Yes. For the record, I like
doing it.
Xavier Watts a lot better than even UCF legend Richie Grant. So, yeah.
I'm going to miss Richie Grant, though. That guy was hysterical in the locker room.
Yeah. He
funny
great guy. Loved Richie. Was pulling for him, obviously, for his whole time here. He's going to get a new fresh start with the 49ers. Hope that works out. But just didn't quite work out here in Atlanta. So best of luck there to Richie. But yeah, I love Watts. I had Watts as like a top 40 player. I did have like Wilson as a second rounder. So to me, it's like very like difficult decision because I agree with you. The center opening is more important. But yeah, glad we don't have to endlessly debate that. So thanks to the football gods for mercifully getting that out of the way for us. But yeah, I mean, I there's a lot of I want to spend just a little bit more time on this trade up because it's so critical now that they are good this year, or at least not terrible this year. Because if they screw up, right, if they're picking in the top 10, then sort of no matter what happens with James Pearce. I mean, there's not probably a situation where James Pearce is like an all-pro this year and they win and they're in the top 10 of the draft. Yeah. So probably don't have to worry about that. But there's a situation where Pearce is looking promising, but you fall off a cliff and your pick is in the top 10 and it's catastrophic. And it's a very risky move, but it sounds like you're on board with taking the risk.
I think you do, and look, you have to also take into account, and this is just the reality. This is Terry Fontenot's 5th year with the Atlanta Falcons. It's only Raheem Morris's first, his second year, going to his second year, but you have to believe that if they don't win in year 5, and they haven't had a winning season, and I don't have to tell you guys, this is not breaking news. It's been 27, since 2017. They've had a winning season. So I think they really need to try to put a winner on the field, and they need to show Arthur Blank that they're trying their best to put a winner on the field in 2025, not 2026, not 2027. They're not rebuilding. They are trying to win right now. And they did whatever they could to try and at least show that in the draft. The future be damned. They'll worry about next year when next year comes. If it doesn't work out this year, who the hell knows what is going to happen for the 2026 draft? Who knows who's going to be making those decisions? So I understand them wanting to make that move now to get as many talented impacts, potential players there on the roster at positions of need. So it makes sense. But again, the results are all that matters in the NFL, not this conversation, not even the draft. It's all about what happens on the field. And we'll see. In a few months. I'm pretty excited for, OTA start. Rookie minicamp is next week. Excited to get a chance to see those guys on the fields for the first time. And it should be very interesting for sure. Seeing Michael Penix for, in year 2, which I think he's going to be extremely exciting. I think he'll have ups and downs, but I think his ups will be extremely exciting ups, and his downs might even be exciting too for the wrong reasons. But I think it'll be an eventful year in Atlanta.
Yeah. That was, I think, one of the biggest things they needed to do is just make sure this team wasn't boring, because I think that was one of their biggest issues before Penix got out there. There was like a large section of the season in that interim where Cousins was floundering, the team was kind of going down, and they got a little bit of juice at the end with Penix, but after kind of a lackluster free agency, not a lot of pop, obviously limited resources, so that's kind of just something you have to accept. Like, it seemed like there was just no buzz about this team. The fans were excited to see Penix, but now it feels like the energy has shifted. So for
I
whatever
haven't been
happened,
bored at all, Kevin. My first week on the job last year was Michael Penix getting drafted at number 8, and it was just craziness after that. The whole, going 6-3, they're riding high. The wheels fall off Kirk Cousins, maybe literally, and they end up going. Penix comes in week 16, looks really good, but they don't make the playoffs. And then, all the things that have happened over the last with the tampering, and now Jeff Ulbricht's son is prank calling Shedeur Sanders. There's nothing boring about this franchise. Say what you will, they have not had a playoff team since 2017, nor a winning season in the last 7 seasons, but they have not been boring. There's a lot of stuff going on in Atlanta.
There's definitely a lot going on now. Yeah. Not always good things. Busy. Not always good things, unfortunately.
They've never been boring. Secret Base did a 7-part special on why the Falcons aren't boring, and it lasted 7 hours total.
Yeah, that was a long one. There was a lot of depth there with this team. But Mark, I know you're going to be heading out. What's your, this is for all the marbles. You got to give us a draft grade now, and there's no takesies backsies. So what you got?
I'm gonna say A. I'll say A-. I don't like to give perfect scores. I'm not an easy grader, guys. I'm gonna say an A-. They didn't have a lot of capital, but from what they did have, they made the most of it. They were aggressive. They did give up a lot, but A-. If they only give up 2 second-round picks for that Pearce selection, an A, full A, maybe even an A+. But for this, A-.
Fair enough. I think there's a lot of people that would agree with you. Falcons fans notably are in love with the draft. So if I don't think the team is necessarily trying to impress the national media types. I think they were more interested in giving fans what they wanted, which was a pass rush, and it seems like hopefully they've been able to deliver that. So I'm excited.
A- also Adnan's blood type. That's what the nurse told me.
I can see that. I think on hanging off the. Oh man, Adnan was not prepared for this. I wasn't prepared either, but
no, I definitely wasn't prepared.
He's going to be on his guard next time, Mark. So
we'll go on here. We'll have a nice, relaxing show. I guess not. Yeah. I guess I should have been on my toes.
Yep.
I have to watch my back during training camp.
Yeah. Adnan's going to come out guns blazing. Not literally, just figuratively. Yeah. We're not doing that. Adnan's not like that. Adnan's a peaceful man at heart. But one more hospital joke and that might change.
The IV? The IV wire you got there.
All right, that one was actually good.
Yeah.
Actually good. These have been heaters.
Yeah.
These have been gold.
This is just straight gold all the way. Mark, thank you so much for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. I know it's a busy week. We will talk to you so much. We'll talk to you again soon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well soon.
All right.
Nice to see you, Mark.
I was not prepared for that, Adnan. I didn't have foreknowledge of this, for the record, So.
I came on. Yeah, I was not prepared either. But,
it was even before the show started too. It was, we went right in, and it was.
Yeah, Mark's a great guy. Mark and I are very comfortable, around one another. Spent a lot of time at camp together, so this isn't someone I don't know or have never met coming on and flaming. It's okay, what the fuck is that for?
Yeah, no, yeah. Just in case you guys don't realize, we're all, obviously we have a good rapport here, and I'm glad Mark is comfortable on the show enough to roast Adnan incessantly, because that's a good sign for our rapport here. But let's get to some of these questions that came in. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your patience. We had a limited time slot with Mark tonight, so I wanted to get his full take on the draft and then get to some of this stuff. So we got Furball with the $5. Oh, somebody had to ask about the Shedeur prank call. So let's get to it. Furball says, for that Jax Ulbricht situation, I feel like the Falcons didn't deserve this because it wasn't their responsibility for someone else's stupidity. What's your thoughts? We might as well just give our thoughts on it. Obviously incredibly childish, incredibly stupid, and let's be honest, Jax Ulbricht might have got himself blacklisted from the NFL, for his entire career for this stupidity. Now he's young, right? But he's 21. This isn't a child. This isn't a high schooler, right? This is a college kid. I graduated from college before I was 21, so but obviously all that stuff, is obvious that he very stupid, probably hurt himself in a major way professionally with. Now his face is all over the national media, and also hurt his dad and his dad's career. Now the Falcons, I don't think really care that much. They weren't going to punish Jeff Ulbricht for this. But look, my take is that this isn't Fort Knox, right? This isn't government secrets that we're disclosing. It's burner phone numbers for the draft picks, right? I just don't think it's that serious. It's a crank call. he had the iPad on his, I think it was basically like his kitchen table in his private home. It's not like he left his playbook in a public place, Kyle Shanahan. It's a nothing burger, right? I mean, we're talking about this like it's some major security breach when he just left his team iPad on the counter with his wife and his son at home, and his son decided he was going to steal information from that iPad. It's not really Jeff Ulbricht's fault. I don't think this is like a gross security violation or a big, mistake on Ulbricht's part, thinking that he could leave his team iPad out in his own private home without somebody stealing information off of it. So to me, I think it's all kind of overblown. I realize that I'm probably more inclined to think that than a neutral observer, but it just feels like if this wasn't Shedeur, like this stuff happens every single year, right? The last several years we've heard about these crank calls. The NFL only suddenly started to care about it when it was Shedeur Sanders, which like that's another thing. If you were going to choose to prank call someone, why would you choose Deion Sanders? So Deion probably has like an internet hit squad that he would send. Like he would hire Anonymous to find you and like, get you. Like this is the last guy anyone should ever mess with. So if anyone here is ever considering pranking Deion or anyone connected to Deion, don't do it. It's not worth it. But it just seems like very silly to me. Obviously it's dumb, but the NFL's reaction to it has also been way overblown, and so is the media's reaction to it, to be quite frank. Like Shedeur was not that bothered by this. Like Shadeur's a young adult. I'm sure he's been crank called many times in his life. I've been crank called. You've been crank called. It's annoying, but like Shedeur handled it better than the media handled it. Like the media is the one screeching about it, not Shedeur. So, if Shadeur's not that upset about it, I don't know why anyone else is. But what do you think about it, Adnan?
I do think everything about this is stupid, or like everything about like taking the phone number, prank calling Shedeur, recording it.
That was the most stupid of all.
Yeah, that may have been the dumbest thing, like of all. But that's a social media age. I do disagree that Jeff Ulbrich did absolutely nothing wrong here, however, because it's still a security breach in him leaving the iPad in a spot where someone not affiliated with the team can get to it. And if nothing happened, then nothing happened. We wouldn't be talking about this. But at the end of the day, someone did, or his son did, get to the iPad. He did do something that resulted in negative PR for the team and for the NFL. Now, did the media overblow it? Yes. Would this, have happened if it wasn't Shedeur? No. But I think it's more so like the fact that it went viral and the fact that it got everyone talking. Like, when something goes viral at the end of the day, like that will, make the punishment a bit more severe, or it will up the severity of the stakes of the situation. I do think that Jeff does need to secure his stuff, even if it's at home, because I'm just looking at it for myself, like as an example, or anyone who works in a corporate setting where if you leave your laptop unlocked or, open, and even if it's like a family member, like around, it's not a public place, and a family member like gets to your information and does something that makes the company look bad, like you would get fired for it. Like I would get fired for it at my company if that happened. Now, I do think that the NFL's punishment was very severe. It was overly severe, of $350,000 total. I thought that Ulbrich was going to get fined for it, and I would have been fine with a fine for Jeff Ulbrich about it. But $100,000 is an insane amount of money. Like I get it, it's a security breach, but $100K for a defensive coordinator, like I know his salary is $1.7 million this year. Take away taxes, take away agent fees, take away all the other fees, and this is a pretty substantial portion of his take-home pay this year. I thought that the fine would be $20,000-$30,000, something around that, something in that sort of window, or around that sort of figure. $100K is a lot of money, and I will say that I definitely wouldn't want to be his son right now because I couldn't imagine doing something that cost my father $100,000 and then made him look really like and did something that made his employers look bad and that resulted in a fine for his company as well. So that would have been like that's I'm sure that Jeff Ulbrich is handling that situation at home. But yeah, everything about this is just sucks because it's like we were talking about how great the draft was and we were talking about the vibes are so good with the Falcons and then all of a sudden this story just sort of hijacks everything.
Yeah,
and it's like that just sort of feels like it always happens where you can't be happy about anything this team does for like even a little bit before something happens where it's like everything falls flat on their face.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like they just can't help themselves sometimes, Adnan. So, who are we to stand in their way? At least this time it didn't cost them a draft pick, I guess.
Oh yeah, I was worried. I was worried that it was going to take that the NFL was going to set an example of the team by taking a draft pick. Then the fan base would be a lot more livid.
Yeah.
But, as it is, honestly, Arthur Blank has a lot of money. 250. Look, nobody wants to lose 250K. I don't care how much money you have, but he'll be fine. I'm sure Jeff Ulbrich cares way more about the 100K that he's losing than Arthur Blank does about the 250K.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not a draft pick. Team gets away with the fine. Hopefully, Ulbrich learns a lesson in securing his NFL sanctioned stuff. Hopefully, his son has learned a valuable lesson in not being an idiot. And like by this news story cycle is gonna it's gonna go away soon. It's gonna end soon, and then we'll talk about something else. The schedule's coming up in a couple of weeks, and this will just be a footnote. And remember when that dumb thing happened at this one point.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the hope for sure. So hopefully we'll get to that sooner rather than later. We got George Costanza. Welcome back, George, with the $2 saying, I still believe that Jalen Ramsey, if he's 80% of what he was with the Rams, puts us into serious Super Bowl contention, especially in the NFC. Can we actually get Ramsey and stay under their cap? # go all in. Yeah, the cap space is not a problem with Ramsey. It's sort of like I think the team trading for Ramsey is only like $6 million. It only owes him like $6 million. So that's not going to be a big deal. It's it's expensive in that it's $6 million, but it's not huge, right? The issue is do the Dolphins want an actual pick for him? Because if they do, I don't think the Falcons can do it at this point. They already traded away 2 picks next year, so they can't really trade any more picks at this point. So they're probably either going to say hey, we'll send you a 7th if you just want cap relief. We'll send you a 7th for him. But other than that, I don't think they can do it. So they might have to just wait and see if he gets cut.
Yeah, I'd be way down to send a 7th so that we don't have to stay on the draft show next year for as long as we get.
There you go. Yeah.
For no other reason. But yeah, maybe if the team, because the team is so adept at getting in trouble and getting fined and this is what the 5th time they've been in trouble with the NFL in the last 4 or 5 years. Maybe if the team just trades away all their draft picks next year, then the NFL can't come for anything.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's genius. That's absolutely genius. They should have done that with the Cousins thing. They should have just traded all of our picks before they had a chance. In that case, they would have just taken it next year, folks. That's how this works. But we could dream. We got Corey with the $5. Thanks, Corey. Says I would have gone Walker at 15, keep that one intact. 46, taking Mike Green. Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to get Mike Green. I think it's pretty clear that he was not on their board, personally. So, it wasn't on a lot of teams' boards, pretty clearly.
Hey,
so.
Man, I won't lie to you. If we had come away with Walker and Mike Green, imagine the vibe. The vibes were already sky high on the draft show, but man, imagine those vibes.
Imagine, Walker, James Pearce trade up, and Mike Green, later. There you go. Then we could just, it's we're just going to redo our whole edge room this offseason. Yeah. 118, Denzel Burke, 218, Logan Brown, and then 242, Seth McLaughlin, who was injured, but was also the best center in college football in 2024 before he was hurt. Yeah, I mean that's another alternate timeline, Corey, that could have been really interesting. You know, obviously very different direction, right? 2 offensive linemen instead of the 1. You know, McLaughlin's probably not going to play this year, so he doesn't really help them this year, but it could be someone who factors in next year. And yeah, I mean, I like Logan Brown. You know, I had Logan Brown higher than Jack Nelson, but Logan Brown I think ended up going undrafted. So, you know, it seems like the NFL wasn't super high on him. Denzel Burke I know has a lot of fans. So, yeah. No, that's an interesting take. Interesting set of picks there that we could have had. But yeah, Adnan, I mean, to wrap up tonight, you know, now that we've had some days to sit on it, what's your overall grade and sort of takeaway on this draft in UDFA Hall?
Yeah, if we're combining draft plus UDFA Hall, I'll give it an A. Draft itself, I do agree with Mark, an A minus, just because the thing that gives it the minus is the value of the trade up to the point where, yeah, the Falcons got everything that they want. They ended up getting Watts, but just like, you know, the trade up in itself in a vacuum of just like the numbers, I feel like the Rams, you know, got away with a bit more in value. So the draft itself an A minus, the UDFA Hall an A plus, and then combined, you know, I'll give it a solid A, you know, A, because, you know, the UDFA Hall, like Kobe Bryant is the big name. He's someone that we literally talked about on day 2, like talking about, oh, like, you know, when the Falcons come around at 104, who are some DBs, and I remember mentioning Billy Bowman, who the Pelicans got in the 4th, and I mentioned Kobe Bryant as a guy where, you know, I think Jacob Parrish was the other DB that we talked about a little bit, and then, you know, there were a couple more, but we were literally talking about Kobe Bryant possibly in the 3rd round. If the Falcons taken Bryant in the 3rd, I'm sure we would have been like, okay, you know, solid pick. You know, we may not have liked it if they took him over Xavier Watts. But, you know, let's say hypothetically Watts was off the board and they ended up taking Bryant. I'm sure we would have been very, very satisfied with that. And you know, that's in the 3rd round. The Falcons got him undrafted.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why probably the weight. Probably, you know, teams are scared off by the fact that, you know, he's in the 170s. So he is definitely on the lighter side. But yeah, he's a very, very aggressive cornerback. He's someone that can play inside and outside. He has the height. He has the frame to the point where I think he can put on some more playing weight. Hopefully not to the point where it's affecting his, you know, his speed or agility. But Kobe Bryant was an A plus, like, you know, addition, and then so was Nick Nash. Nick Nash was, you know, was he a finalist for the Biletnikoff Award?
Yeah.
So which went to Travis Hunter as the best wide receiver, but, you know, there's plenty of people in college football circles who think that Nick Nash should have won that award. And he's someone who is going to, you know, definitely have his say in that wide receiver like 6 battle that we always keep, you know, a very close eye on in training camp, because it's, you know, that roster spot for the final wide receiver spot is always one of the most entertaining and exciting ones. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Nick Nash won that battle this year. So yeah, and then you know, there are others. We heard Mark mention a few other names, you know, regarding UDFAs, but yeah, definitely very, very happy with the draft, very happy with the approach to the draft that Terry Fontenot took. It feels like he completely changed his approach this year. He kept it simple. He took what the draft gave him. He didn't galaxy brain it. He let the other, you know, bad GMs galaxy brain it, and then he completely took advantage of that by taking guys at complete values 1 round later than where they should have been. Just like how Howie Roseman has done it for years in Philadelphia. Just like how the Ravens have done it for years over there in Baltimore. And you know, it just feels like, you know, I'm so excited. I haven't been this excited about a draft in I don't know how long.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how these guys pan out. I mean, I'd probably give the draft like, you know, couching things, because there is the potential for this to go catastrophically wrong, right? If they do mess up this season and, you know, end up gifting a top 10 pick to the Rams. Like, the Rams have just an enormous amount of upside on this trade. The Falcons have to be really careful, but there's obviously a scenario where the Falcons trade the get the 26th pick and give back the 23rd pick in the next year, which that's obviously a plus value proposition. So I think at this stage, I'm really happy with it. I think I'd probably settle on like a B. Oh, hold on. Thought I was going to sneeze. It didn't come. It's all right. All right. Yes. Probably I'm going to settle on a B tentatively until I see how the season plays out. But with UDFA, like UDFA A+. Like, I mean, they're probably going to have the best UDFA class. I'm going to talk to Thor next week, Thor Nystrom, who's the guy that actually tracks all the UDFAs and actually knows about most of these players. So he's going to give me his take. I'm pretty sure after him coming on and basically being able to tell me very little about most of the Falcons UDFAs most years, because they really, the last couple of years, have kind of phoned in their UDFA classes, what it's felt like. This year, they did not. They did the opposite of that. I think they absolutely crushed this UDFA group. I think most of them were top 300 players. There's just a few of them outside of that. So really excited to see these guys. I think Nick Nash is going to challenge for wide receiver 3 this year. I think it's pretty clear that the Falcons want a bigger slot receiver. Just look at who they brought in, right? I mean, all these guys are 6'1 plus. Quincy Skinner, 6'1", Nick Nash, 6'3", David Sills, 6'3", Jesse Matthews, 6'1", Mekhi Polk, 6'3", Casey Washington, 6'1", Dylan Drummond, 6'2", Chris Blair, 6'2". The only people that aren't 6'1 plus are Ray McLeod, Jamal Agnew, and Philip Dorsett, who are like returners, right? Everybody else is big. So I think they're trying to get bigger in the slot, probably to help with the run blocking. And just to that, I mean, that's what the Rams do, right? That their receivers are kind of more interchangeable. I think that's what they're going for. Makes sense that that's where they'd move long term. I don't think Ray McLeod's getting kicked to the curb or anything. I just think that this team is in a position where they're going to start maybe looking to get closer to that Rams receiving core, and Nick Nash could absolutely be that piece. Now he's not as dynamic after the catch as Ray. He doesn't have the long speed. He's a fine athlete. He's got great contact balance, great hands. Really impressive route running savvy for a guy that's only played receiver for like 2 years. I mean, I know he's getting like, some people are like, oh, well, isn't this just Jared Bernhardt, sort of a convert, like a quarterback convert. Bernhardt was a better athlete, but didn't know how to play receiver, right? I mean, like very much a raw receiving prospect. Nick Nash knows how to play receiver. Nick Nash put up the most yards, receiving touchdowns, catches in college football, Division I, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, well, who was he playing? He's out in the Mountain West. Ashton GT was in the Mountain West too. I don't hear people complaining about his competition level. I mean, some people are, but like, so.
I'm always so impressed by Jared Bernhardt, even to this day.
Yes, me too.
That he went from like a lacrosse star, like, the best lacrosse player in college, to like, he's just like, okay, now I'm just going to go play wide receiver. And then like 3 years later, he makes an NFL roster, like in his first year out of training camp. He obviously retired afterwards, but yeah, that's just like
still impressive.
Do you know how hard that is to do, of just like being like, imagine now being like, okay, I'm just going to go play wide receiver. And then like, or I'm going to go play football, because he wasn't just a wide receiver, in his collegiate days. Then like 3 years later, you've shattered some college records in the lower division, and then I'm gonna go make an NFL roster, like right away. Like some guys play football their whole lives to not even get close to that. So yeah, shout out to Jared Bernhardt, one of my favorite like UDFAs that year. I remember writing a feature like article on him. But yeah, definitely like he was very raw when it comes to the wide receiver position. Like Nick Nash is really good. Like, you put on the tape and he's really impressive. Like it's not like you look at the stats, you look at everything about it, and you're thinking to yourself, like, how did he fall completely out of the draft? I know, like, I'm sure we would have been over the moon had we taken him in the 7th round. I mean, if we had a 6th rounder and took Nick Nash, I'm sure we would have been ecstatic. So, definitely to get both those UDFAs, you can tell that the team was really focused on the UDFA market this year too. Like they really wanted to go find some contributors, and that they were really looking to invest. And that's what they did. And props to them, because they did go into this draft down 2 first rounders, or sorry, not 2 first rounders, but down 2 draft picks, down the 3rd rounder and the 5th rounder. And obviously they did add the 3rd in the trade with the Rams, and now they found 2 guys who probably should have been drafted, on day 3, and Kobe Bryant could have probably been drafted on day 2. And yeah, it's just the approach, everything they've done with this draft, has just been so impressive, especially when you compare it to years past, because it's like, are these the same decision makers? Like it feels surreal. It feels like it's been a 180.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. I'm really impressed with this draft class. I think it's just really the way they approached it, and like you said, the way they targeted values throughout and got guys that were just good, that have clear fits on the defense. It just feels like they've changed approach in a meaningful way, changed for the better. And that I think is such an important thing, because they bet on themselves to win this year. If they don't, they're out of here. And their Falcons are not going to have a good shot at getting another coach. I can tell you that, guys, without that 1st round pick. So they've basically gone all in this year. But they kind of needed to, right? I mean, it's kind of that situation where they needed to either prove that that Fontenot's the GM to do this, and that Raheem's the coach to take us there, or we need to know that they're not, so we can start planning for the future and starting over again. And I don't really want to start over again. I want this to work. So let's swing, let's hit, and let's go score. Like let's maybe they don't have to make the playoffs, but can we win 9 games? Can we get to a winning record, for God's sake?
No, we need to make the playoffs.
Yes, we need the playoffs. Yes, Adnan.
Not making the playoffs. Like winning 9 games and not making it, like screw that. We could have done that.
What if we win 10 and don't make it because of some craziness,
Yeah, and we could have won 9 games last year and not made it against. I wouldn't have felt any better about last season had we beaten the Panthers.
Yeah,
in that Week 18 game. Like it's time. It's been 7 years. You've made all the investment. You've even borrowed. Taken out sort of an extra mortgage from next year. You borrowed from next year. And to not make the playoffs now is just outright unacceptable. Honestly, to not have made the playoffs last year, to me, was fully unacceptable. And to not do it again, it's like it will just be, I mean, it'll sort of prove the media right that this franchise can't really do anything right.
Yeah. So, they're going to have to prove people wrong for a change instead of proving the pessimists right.
And the pessimists are batting like 900 right now. Like say what you want about the pessimists, and but it's like they're almost always right, especially the last like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, the only thing they were wrong about has been Penix, really. So, at least that's the most important thing to be wrong about.
Even that's a TBD right now.
Yeah, I mean, technically, yes, still TBD. We got 2 more questions here before we wrap up. We got Jason Gaines with the $2. Thanks, Jason. Says, I'm cautiously optimistic about the Falcons draft. Would have preferred trading down in round 1, picking Mike Green. Also heard that Jalen Walker may need shoulder surgery, and that's why he fell to pick 15. Kobe Bryant is a steal as a UDFA. I've heard this rumor too. I have not seen it corroborated anywhere. I wouldn't take it seriously unless the team says something about it. It's possible, but there hasn't been really any legit sourcing on that as far as I'm concerned. That doesn't mean it's not true. It just means that, no one reported it prior to the draft. These teams all had medicals on Jalen Walker. They would have gotten out, in my opinion. So I don't think it's anything that critical, right? I don't think it's going to be a big deal for him, even if there is some truth to it. But yeah, Kobe Bryant's awesome. No doubt about that. George Costanza with the $2 says, if you go back and review the tape, I hated the trade up for Rook. I thought it was idiotic. I loved this year's trade up to get a second edge in the first round. Gives us great flexibility there. That 5th-year option is also a thing. Also, Mike Green had a big red flag. Yes, no doubt about that, George. And yeah, we'll have to see. This this is Rook's going to have an opportunity this year. I think that's pretty clear. So hopefully they can prove themselves right with Rook as well, who's going to probably be, I mean, he's going to be starting at this point. I mean, I don't know who would be starting above him. So
honestly, Rook may genuinely be the most important player on the defense this year when it comes to the Falcons needing him to be successful.
Yeah.
Because
I think so.
Yeah, if it's not Rook, if he's not good, if he doesn't progress, or if he plays poorly, like that defensive line, the interior of the defensive line is just it's bad. Like that is going to be a key weakness that opposing teams can just easily drill through the Falcons on. So yeah, I definitely hope that Rook, is who they thought that he would be, and that he is the guy that was worth trading up for in the second round. Because, yeah, honestly, it's kind of crazy because on offense, clearly the most important player is going to be Penix. For the entire franchise, it's going to be Penix for the next few years. But on defense, I think an argument is made that the Falcons' success may hinge most on Rook out of everyone on this defense.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's entirely possible. So, they obviously placed a big bet on him, and I'm sure they would like to see that bet be successful. So, I unlike last year, I think he's going to get every opportunity to play and start. So, I hope that he takes it and runs with it, because the potential was always there. The potential's always been there with him. One of the highest ceiling players in that draft. So we'll have to see if they can. Now, maybe now that they have a real defensive line coach, that'll help. So I know Trayshawn was very, very anti-Jay Rodgers. So we got our wish, and we got a real defensive line coach this year in Nate Ollie. So, Adnan, anything else you wanna end on before we sign off tonight?
No, I think we hit it all. The vibes are good. The vibes are high right now. Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, the Jax Ulbrich thing gave us a story, or gave us something to talk about on the show. So, that's the silver lining here.
Content.
Yeah, the team will always give us content, no matter for better or for worse. But yeah, it's going to be exciting, having the vibes high for the next, few months or whatever now after this draft. We definitely needed it.
Yeah, we did. We needed a shot in the arm, and that's what we got. We will hope that this team can get it together and continue to make smart decisions and put themselves in a position to make the playoffs this year, because we've waited long enough for this to happen. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us here tonight on the Falcoholic Live. Thanks to Marc Raimondi for coming on and chopping it up with us. Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. You can find him in Grady Memorial Hospital for the time being. You thought you were out of the woods once he left.
It's this team trying to kill me.
That's it. You were so high, and then the prank call stuff came out and just dropped into depression. So, yeah, guys, thank you so much. We do appreciate you. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. That really helps us out. If you want to support the show, you can do so by joining up with the channel memberships. You can also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Really appreciate that. I will have a show coming out later this week talking about this draft class a bit more, talking about my in-depth thoughts on it, and how I really like the team betting on themselves at this stage of the process. Then, like I said earlier, next week we will have Thor Nystrom on for an early week show, and then we'll be back for another Falcoholic Live after that. Probably after the next couple of weeks, we'll be going down, to our off-season schedule of 2 shows a week instead of 3. Deep off-season schedule of 2 shows a week up until we start ramping up for training camp. But we will still have stuff coming your guys' way frequently here. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be back shortly with more Falcons takes as we get closer and closer to real football. But unfortunately, we're now the furthest away. The content drought is about to begin. So we gotta savor these draft moments that we can still talk about for the next little bit. So we'll be here, guys. We'll see you guys next time on the Falcoholic Live. Have a great night, folks. Thanks.